This is Andrew Hada from Nothing Ventured Media. I want to tell you about all the feature films we've made and how you can see them right now. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one's a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. The documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, A Family of Fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Finally, The Empty Space, winner of multiple awards, including the Sacramento Horror Film Festival's Best of the Fest, is a cosmic horror about Amy Andrews, who's dealing with anxiety and depression after a violent attack that killed her husband. As she tries to find herself, she starts to lose her grasp on reality. Or could it be something much more sinister? The Empty Space is full of twists and turns, with Grace DeWilder of Rue Morgue magazine calling it a powerful film full of excellent performances by practically every cast member. All of Andrew Hada's movies are available to rent or buy on streaming services such as Tubi, Amazon, and many other places. And if that's not enough for you, Hada Films is home to all of our short films. So take a look around and see what you like. Spend your day with Hada Films and Nothing Ventured Media. Now, let's start the bomb squad. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Worker Bee podcast, according to Josh.
Starring Josh.
I just got off work.
He just got off work.
Cracking
He's
ciders.
so busy.
I did just get off work.
I called you Johnny Appleseed earlier. I don't know if you heard.
Yeah.
Because you're drinking cider.
Because I'm drinking a cider, but it's a peach cider.
Guys, we're doing a nighttime one, and we're not in professional mode today.
No.
But yes, welcome to the Bomb Squad. I'm Andrew Hada. I'm a writer director. There's two of my movies right there. I'm sure there's the third one, but I can't see it from my screen. This is William Murdoch. He's making some music.
And I would also like to point out to our listeners, or viewers especially, that I'm only wearing these sunglasses because I have a massive sty on my hand, not because I'm going for any sort of style. Just want that to know. Sty over style.
Yes. You also said on your hand, not on your, you meant eye.
Did I say on my hand?
Yes.
No, on my right here. It's right here. No, you can't. It's the only location you can get a sty.
I know you like pointed at your eye and you said, "I got a sty on my hand."
Oh no.
Well, guys, it's Friday. We ain't got shit to do.
It's 6:30.
We ain't got no job.
Well,
except for Josh.
We all have jobs.
He's the Lisa.
I actually don't know if William does.
He's the Lisa of our
yes, sir.
Of our group.
He's really in and out.
He's a Debo. But yes, welcome to the Bomb Squad,
neighborhood,
where we talk underappreciated and over or underrated films. And today, I don't know which one does it fall into. We're covering 2014's Inherent Vice. You know, you guys hate when we cover non-horror movies. Well, guess what? I was scared the whole time that the movie was going to not end.
The horror will be the boredom of you watching.
Okay, here's the challenge. I don't know whose turn it is. William, is it your turn?
I did Prince of Darkness.
Okay, so it is.
No.
It's going to be. Oh, wait, but before I say that, so this movie is directed and written by Paul Thomas Anderson, based on a book by Thomas Pynchon. It stars Joaquin Phoenix. It stars Josh Brolin. It stars Owen Wilson. And also, of course, Benicio del Toro. And then, of course, the late, great Michael Kenneth Williams, one of my favorite actors. And then, of course, the most beautiful girl in the world, Catherine Waterston. Give it up. That's why I went to go see that Jobs movie in theaters. It was not that good. It was actually good. I like it a lot, but
The one
nobody
with
else does.
the Danny Boyle one or the Ashton Kutcher one?
The Danny Boyle
what if the
one.
other
That's pretty good.
actresses were waiting? They're like, "Oh, he's about to say me, Jenna Malone or Reese Witherspoon," and then you said her. And now they're like,
Yeah,
Listen, Jenna.
the
Listen,
A-list
Jenna.
cast of
I
our
love,
listeners.
I love
I
you and
know.
me on Demon, but I gotta go with my girl Catherine every time.
Reese catches every single one of our episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so here's the challenge, Joshua. I guess it's your turn. I need you to summarize this movie in one sentence. Don't make it.
Actually, I could do that.
You can do that, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
Stoner detective solves boring crime.
Yeah.
that's
about
it.
You could have made it a compound sentence. You could have done anything.
Could have added
complex.
more.
Yeah.
I mean, that is basically
Simple
what
stuff.
it is. So, well, I'll say this is the second time I've seen it. I saw it in theaters and I was very, very disappointed. Oh, by the way, we should make this series because last week we covered
Zodiac.
What movie did we? Zodiac. We should
Very
make this
similar.
series movies with amazing trailers because both this movie and the Zodiac have some of the best trailers. Go check out those trailers right now and then come back.
Yeah.
Because both of them are good. But now that you've checked out the Inherent Vice trailer, go watch the movie and prepare to be disappointed because the movie is nothing like that trailer.
Yeah.
And the whole time you're going to be like, but I love that trailer. It was amazing. And
I think,
Okay.
I don't know, like, how we want to get into it. I think because this is like a neo-noir mystery comedy kind of, and I love like every Paul Thomas Anderson movie I've seen up to this movie.
Totally.
Yeah.
And obviously they're all very different. But like it's like I don't think his like kind of meandering style works when you're also like, by the way, there's this mystery you have to pay attention to, you know? And it's like, and you could say you don't have to pay attention to it, but so much of it is just exposition about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
John, okay. Well, let me just say. So yeah, I saw this in theaters. I didn't like it at all. I really loved the trailer. I saw this again yesterday. I was coming off of a high, just to tell you what mood I was in. Because this movie's all about
your headspace. Yeah.
Yeah. And
level.
I still did not like it, but I liked it a little bit more than last time.
This is my third time seeing it, and I've liked it each time a little bit.
That was my first time.
I was going to say, if I watch this movie 6 times, I will probably like it a lot. Yeah. But also, I don't think I need to watch this movie 6 times, I think.
I know. I mean, I feel like what Josh was saying about like how the meandering style doesn't really work like with this movie as well. Like, it kind of goes back to Mystery Men if you listen to the Mystery Men episode, like where the tone for this movie is just so hard. What's that? Yeah, linked here. And it's like if he would have made this movie when he was doing like Boogie Night stuff that was like ultra stylized and like fast paced and like really fun. Yeah. I think it could have worked a lot better, but he's kind of in like the post, like there was There'll Be Blood and then The Master got even more drifty. And yeah, like the jokes just like it's a jokey script. It's super plot heavy. It's super like it should be wacky. It should be like The Big Lebowski kind of, which is kind of what it's almost ripping off.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say is that the thing is like I'm gonna disagree with both of you in saying that this movie couldn't work because it has worked. The Big Lebowski is just the right version of this movie.
Well, I don't mean like this movie in general, but I think this specific version of this story can't work because of
it also might. Yeah. I think a really big part of it is that I just think Joaquin Phoenix cannot you need someone very charismatic and like kind of he's like warm to like be this kind of like stoner because Joaquin I think he's a good actor but I think he can only
hold on because you guys are like just jumping into analysis without talking. So Joaquin Phoenix plays like this detective and he's like everyone like kind of treats him like a bum. He's like a pothead and then he kind of seems very counterculture. Like at the very beginning, one of the jokes that lands is that like someone tells him like, "Oh, you can have your hair however you want," and he's like, "Really?" And then it cuts to him, and he has like
the braids
in his hair.
Yeah, that was good.
He seems very like, oh, he just lets it go, and he's okay with anything. Now, having said that, Josh, continue your thought because you're 100% correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, you have this detective, very go with the flow, cool. he's dating and sleeping with multiple women, but
Yeah.
you really need this guy to be likable, almost like I don't know what modern actor, but like a young Dustin Hoffman could possibly do it.
I
I
think
don't
that
know,
Robert Downey
maybe.
Jr. was supposed to be the main character,
Right.
but then
I
Oh,
but
think
they,
see,
they thought
that
they thought he
makes
was too
perfect
old to do it, so they
sense.
got Joaquin
and
Phoenix
see
instead.
I do because I feel like if you had Robert Downey Jr. and he had been in this, like he would have. You couldn't have had Catherine Waterston. She's like too young. It would have looked weird. And
That's probably
Yeah,
why they didn't get him.
but
Like
but
he
yeah,
it's
was
also
too old
like
for a lot of
it's the
reasons.
'70s, and Paul Thomas Anderson loves age inappropriate relationships. So
That's true.
right.
That is very true.
Well, and it's so one of the things is the general plot is that his ex girlfriend, played by Catherine Waterston, has like told him that like there's something weird with some guy that she's seen,
Yeah.
and like for no real reason because she's like, hey, I just wanted to warn you about this, and he's like, okay, what do you want me to do with this? And she's like, oh well, just in case, just in case anything happens, and then like the story goes along and it's like he gets hired by someone else he gets hired by a black guy to like get some money back from his cellmate who is an Aryan Brotherhood, and the black guy can't go talk to him because he was in the Aryan Brotherhood, so they need Joaquin Phoenix to kind of be in the second person.
Yeah.
And then this all kind of wraps up with his girlfriend, but it's like you're like trying to hang on as like things keep shifting, but everything is both connected and disconnected at the same time. So it never feels like you really know what's going on. And like not in a way where like in the Big Lebowski, you're kind of learning things as he learns things. In this one, like no one's learning anything. Like even
Right.
Joaquin Phoenix is kind of confused.
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
and
they make the
it's
feeling of being too high is like very well done in this movie, but
Yeah.
like not in a fun way, like in a more of a what?
It's a bad
Just
trip.
yeah, it's a little. It's funny. It's almost like because it's billed as like a stoner comedy, but it's like it's almost this stoner when you're like, oh,
Tragedy.
I'm still
Yeah.
too high, but I have to like have a serious conversation with
and
someone,
it's just
and it's like
uncomfortable.
it's really like you're like, oh, this sucks, and it's like the whole movie almost feels like that, but it's
Totally.
like an anti-stoner comedy, and I kind of get it because it takes place in like 1970s. So it's like, oh, it's the come down of like the hippies are kind of like washed out now, and you're kind of like the counterculture is just kind of giving way to like the cynicism, but
Right.
it's not really enjoyable to watch. I don't know. It's
Well, I
like,
think
Yeah.
so. There's like a scene at the beginning once he gets hired to go find the white supremacists, and then he goes to a head shop, which a head shop in real life is where they sell like bongs and pipes and shit, and
Yeah.
sometimes they sell weed. Here, a headshot is where you can sign up to give head to a woman, and then they're like, "Oh, by the way, policemen get like half off," and then they're like, "Oh, okay, can I do that?" And then like two girls just start having sex with each other. We're definitely not gonna ever get monetized for this episode. And
Yeah.
then like he gets knocked out, and then something happens, but I'm like, okay, is this like an absurd movie where this kind of shit happens, or is this like they were teasing him, or like
yeah,
what is
and
going
it's
on?
like sometimes it's like, oh, this is really grown, other times it's like
Yeah.
super farcical, like where it's like
Yeah.
everyone's super silly, but not in, I don't know, it's just
It's
tonally it's such a
it's
clash.
like it's like a really smart guy trying to make like super silly jokes in the same conversation, and
Yeah.
you're just like, I don't think that you're that funny right now, man. Like it's just
Yeah.
like it doesn't land because it's like too fancy, and it's like
like
this isn't silly
not
enough.
to use this movie. This is essentially going to become a Big Lebowski review. But there's
Yeah,
that
for
scene where
real.
he goes to Jackie Treehorn's house, like my favorite scene in the whole movie, and like Jackie Treehorn like writes something, and then the dude is like, "What the hell did you write?" So he
Right.
he's playing like detective. He goes to the thing. And he like scratches it with a pencil to see what the last markings were, and it's just a picture of a guy with a huge cock.
Yeah.
right.
Right.
But
One of the best
if you
jokes.
if
Yeah.
you like back up and look at the entire thing, like the guy he was talking to is at a party. They have no reason to be scared of the dude or even think the dude's serious in his investigation.
Right.
So him like drawing a picture of like a hot guy at a party isn't that weird, but it's funny because the dude thinks it's gonna be related when
Right.
it's like no one cares about the dude. That's where the joke comes in. But like in this one, it's like, okay, are they really like, is that normally what is this like a brothel? And if it's not a brothel, like why does everyone keep referring to it as a head shop?
You know they
Even
were
like the
calling it a head
cops?
shop. Are they calling it a head shop?
Yeah, because he keeps going like, "Oh, you're going to the
I think
head
it's like
shop."
ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I
I
mean
think
that's the joke.
it's
Right, I
just a
get it
lot of
now.
jokes
Yeah.
that don't
Yeah.
know. You know what? I almost think like I feel like there's two types of Paul Thomas Anderson movies I've seen, and I know there's definitely movies of his I haven't seen. There's the kind of
Yeah.
like Magnolia, dozen characters. You're kind of following all of them for a little bit, and they all kind of have like an arc they're going on that you kind of like bounce between.
Yeah.
Or Boogie Nights is the same way.
Hmm.
Or you have like The Master or like There Will Be Blood, where it's like, no, we're just following like one or two guys, and it's like deathly serious, and
Right.
it's like
Yeah, for sure.
this like
Phantom Thread's that way.
building pressure, and this almost wants to be. They're like, no, it's going to be like silly and broad, but also
Yeah.
just following this one guy. It's like, well, make that guy likable.
Exactly.
I don't
like,
know.
And
It's
that's exactly what I mean. Like those first movies with like all the characters, they're so fun and like they're so full of style. And then he makes that major shift with like There'll Be Blood and The Master. Like those are, it's like he has a whole separate
which are
career
great
after.
movies,
Yeah,
by the way.
and he's using that style here, and it's like, no, this is a plot-driven movie. This is like this should be wacky and
Right.
fun. Like that's why they made the trailer the way they made it. And since it's not that way, we're kind of like confused. Like, is it supposed to be funny? Because like these jokes aren't really landing, and like what? And it's too drifty.
And I think the other thing is that every other character is so much more interesting than Joaquin Phoenix. Like,
Yeah.
first you have Bigfoot played by Josh Brolin, and he's like this. He wants to be an actor,
Yeah,
but he wants to be an actor, so he's doing auditions, but he's still a detective, but also he never has a partner because his partner was killed. And then he hates, like, every single time he's talking to Joaquin Phoenix, he, like, manages to work in that Joaquin Phoenix is hippie trash.
yeah.
Like, he's like, oh, the reason you
Yeah.
couldn't find that clue is because of your stupid hippie brain can't see things for
And then
common
sometimes he
sense.
just hits
Like,
him for no reason. He will physically
Yeah.
brutalize him, which is
See,
kind
yeah.
of
that's like a good setup.
Right.
Yeah, there's
And
like
it's-
because they're both good actors, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like he keeps eating like these chocolate dipped bananas, and it clearly
Right.
looks phallic,
Yeah.
and they take as much advantage of that as they can. And then Benicio del Toro plays Joaquin Phoenix's lawyer, and he's a maritime lawyer,
Yeah.
but his only criminal client is Joaquin Phoenix. But like every time he talks, he's like at the very beginning when he tries to, because they arrest. Okay, so what happens is the neo-Nazi guy. They once they knock out Joaquin Phoenix, he wakes up and he's next to the neo-Nazi guy, but the neo-Nazi guy's been killed. So they like at first they make it seem like they think it's him, but then they clearly don't.
Right.
Like they don't take it
Yeah.
seriously at all. But for him to get out, Benicio del Toro has to go see him, and he's like, oh, hey, my client needs to leave. And then he goes, oh, and then like what Josh Brolin starts saying something about how they don't need a warrant. And then Benicio del Toro's like, oh, I could get you, we can go without that. And then Joaquin Phoenix is like, hey, you're my lawyer. You're not the cop's lawyer.
Yeah.
Because he's helping out the cop. So like it's very funny, but then like
Yeah.
you're grounded by this guy who sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like when he plays off like good like people, because almost like immediately after this, it's like there's basically three investigations. There's his ex-girlfriend is like, hey, look into this super rich real estate developer
Yeah.
that I'm dating, who's also cheap, like whatever. And then the black guy who's the guy from The Wire.
Yeah.
There's only
Yeah,
one
it's-
scene.
Michael K.
Yeah.
Williams.
Yeah. But he's like, oh yeah, look into this neo-Nazi who dies right away. So that kind of ends up not mattering. And then he's like, oh, by the way, Jenna Malone wants you to look into her missing husband,
Yeah.
who's like a musician. Yeah,
Owen Wilson.
And it's also like if you see, like Blade Runner will have two stories, or like a lot of neo-noir films.
Yeah, these kind of mysteries always
or
are
noir
like, they're
films,
always so
they'll
packed.
have. Yeah, they'll have two, and then they'll mix it. But this one has three, and it's just too much,
Yeah.
And then
what's weird though is that it's not like he's investigating the first thing and then like gets into the other stuff. He just like takes these jobs unrelated, and it's like, oh, by the way, these tie back to the other thing. Like it's
Right.
like it's kind of clumsy in that way too,
And
like,
I think the other problem with it is that you have. It doesn't seem like Joaquin Phoenix is invested in any of the stories.
Right.
And so, like, he's not trying to really solve any of the crimes other than in a professional way. But it's like, oh, but he should be. He's like one of the biggest problems with this movie is they kind of frame it like him and Catherine Waterston are like these these lovers who will always find
Right,
each
like
other.
star-crossed
There's true
or
love
something.
between them. But they don't ever like act like that. Like again, he doesn't really seem motivated in her, like to help her. He also doesn't really seem to care about her that much. He's also dating 3 other women.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem is that him and Reese Witherspoon have such good chemistry that you're like, oh, and he does not have almost any chemistry with Catherine
They only have
Marcy.
like one good
So
scene
it's
together.
like,
We'll get into that later.
yeah, and it's like, why, like, it's hard for us to invest in like, oh, he's helping this girl that he's really in love with when he doesn't really seem like he's in love with her.
Yeah.
And there was so many ways for them to do that. Like they could have had him, oh, like, oh, that investigation is the one he really cares about.
Right,
The other ones he's
right.
kind of blowing
Yeah.
off. Or he could have like been trying, I don't know. Like her thing is such a weird, like her boyfriend is getting kidnapped by his husband, but like nobody really cares. Like nobody really is worried about anyone.
Right. And I would think, like, even to like piggyback on that a little bit, like we don't really know which case he likes the most, but like we also like don't like The Big Lebowski. I know we want to not mention that movie as much, but it's so hard not to. But it's like that movie's funny because like he doesn't want to do the case, like he's put out by it, and it's like he just wants to kind of go back
Right.
home, and like this sucks. But it's like we don't really know. Like Joaquin Phoenix doesn't really want to go home. Doesn't really want to solve the case. He doesn't really want to find a girl. He doesn't really want to do anything.
It's like his job he hates, but
he's cool with doing it.
Which I kind of but again, I could almost see, like, God, now that you've said RDJ, I could totally see him like kind of pulling that off of like oh, he's irreverent, like he doesn't care about anything, but he's still like solving it. I don't know.
Yeah, but see, and again, like we don't even have to think like he does this kind of in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yes,
he's a little bit more scared, but he still has that attitude where like he doesn't really know what's going on, but he's trying to solve everything as we're going along.
It seems important to him.
And again, and it's like, I don't know. I struggle because like the first half of this movie is really funny, but by the time like at one point he like goes to the real estate developer's house and like his wife is with her bodyguard and they're clearly sleeping with each other, and then he finds the real estate agent and he's like just like chilling upstairs, and I'm like, okay, what happened? Like, what is this?
Yeah, it's isn't it? It's Eric Roberts, right?
It's Eric Roberts.
And he's just like,
who does a good job. I mean,
and
he plays it well.
I don't even think no one's doing a bad job. It's all these like good actors.
Right. I mean, it's still a Paul Thomas Anderson movie at the end of the day.
Clicking.
It's well made, even though it doesn't land.
Impeccable in some places. Even the Martin Short stuff, I thought was like, oh, this is kind of funny, and then he just kind of dies off camera in the next scene. She's like, by the way, that guy died right after.
That's probably the funniest scene in the movie is whenever they get pulled over. Or like the whole thing at the dentist office is like, that's where the zaniness, like that whole movie should have been like that. Like it should have been crazy. Like it should have been like,
where he's like, oh, cocaine? Right. And he's like, well, if I must.
To be sociable.
And I was like, this is actually a good scene.
Yeah.
Like that was great. Like, but there's a lot of him just sitting in his apartment, just like in between cases.
and there's a lot of him like talking to people like so then he finds the guy Jenna Malone's husband. It's played by Owen Wilson, and like almost the way they're playing it should be like a Joe Pesci and Lethal Weapon 2 kind of funny character, but there's just no jokes. Like they just talk normal.
He just kind of plays it straight. And it's like, is it just supposed to be funny? It's Owen Wilson. I don't know. It just doesn't really work.
The weird thing is then they cut to like there's like a scene where like once he realizes everything's connected, he's trying to like explain this to Bigfoot, and he's like, hey man, like this is weird, isn't this weird? And like Bigfoot's like calls him like a hippie scum or something, but then he like goes through it, but like he's eating the chocolate covered banana so aggressively that it's hard not to laugh at his performance.
Their relationship is such a good part.
It ends up sticking. Sure. Yeah, it's you like want more of that. Like it could have worked as like if they were buddy cops, or if it was just him by himself, but he was played by anyone else.
Right, which is weird because Joaquin's so good.
I think certain
things he's in.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
I think it's because but Joaquin's like a creep and everything. Even in movies where he's sympathetic, there's a creep factor.
Sure,
with her,
he's weird. He's always kind of weird.
Like, and you almost need this guy to be so charming that like he's like floating on a cloud of the movie. You know,
I think it's that thing where the thing about Joaquin Phoenix is that if he's not playing evil, he has to play kind of dumb, but like dumb in a naive way. Where this guy he seems to be very smart. He's just kind of dumb in a like hippie stoner way, and that's not like that won't work in this movie.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, even at the end when he's like trying to help people, it's like, oh, you're helping them.
Right.
I don't think you care.
He kind of like he uncovers it's like a cult or drug ring or something. It's
Golden
like the
Fang.
dentist's thing, the golden
Golden
Fang.
Fang, yeah.
And but he's like, oh, I think this is like a big deal, and Josh Brolin doesn't really care, and then it doesn't really matter either because like the way it falls out, like kind of the way it like leads towards the conclusion is he goes to Reese Witherspoon. He's like, hey, can I look up this like can I look up the like file, like the police file on
who killed Bigfoot's partner, I think.
Oh
yeah, on like Adrian. His name was like Adrian something, and they just give it to him. He's like, oh, this is like the answer, and then he like goes there and gets like abducted and kind of gets his way out.
Yeah,
I cannot reiterate how good Reese Witherspoon is in this role and how much she should have been following.
I know she's also only in like 2 or 3 scenes.
And she's so like, there's a part where she's walking with Joaquin Phoenix and they're kind of talking about their plans later, and they get stopped by 2 FBI agents, and she goes like, "Oh
yeah, I'll be right over there,"
and she literally like just walks away and like shrugs like, "Fuck you, buddy, I'm out." And it's so funny, like why, like she just does not care about him. And then like when she calls him to like go on a date, she's like, "Oh, you probably haven't taken a shower. You're disgusting."
Yeah. She's like, "Are you hallucinating right now?"
And she's like, "Oh, you're."
Yeah, it's a good.
It's really good,
contrast.
and they work well together. But like, and then it almost feels like, at the end of Killers of a Flower Moon, like the whole point of the FBI coming in is like to show how easily anyone could have solved that crime, and there's just nobody didn't. That's like the whole point of it,
Right.
But this one, they show you how easy it is to solve the crime, but then for no real reason, and then like.
But then, like, why didn't Josh Brolin solve it? Because he also would have had access to the LAP. Like it makes sense in Killers of the Flower Moon because it's about how horribly racist American is, towards Native Americans. But in this one, it's like, Josh Brolin's partner was killed, and he just never followed up until this other guy decides to invest it. Like it's just such a weird. He wanted to get close to the Golden Fang,
right? Like for like what he does in the very end. Isn't that why he did it all?
Yeah,
he's gonna rip him off, basically. But then that also kind of doesn't matter.
That also it goes that goes against everything we've like the whole time they're telling us that Bigfoot has been so affected by his partner's murder that he can't function. That's why he acts all weird and he's such a terrible person. But then at the end, it's like, oh no, he just needed to rob them, and it's like, okay, so he didn't care. Like, what was the point?
Right.
Of this guy?
But he also I feel like he could have still robbed them. Or, I don't know. It just everyone's just kind of all over the place.
And then so they kill the guy who killed his partner, and then Bigfoot tries to frame Doc by leaving heroin in his car, but he shows him he's doing it. So then Doc just calls the guys. He's like, "Hey, I have your heroin," and they're like, "Okay, come get it." And then Doc they're like, "Well, what do you want? We'll give you some money." And he's like, "Oh, I don't want money. I want you to free Owen Wilson from being an informant because he was an informant. Not that it mattered.
Yeah.
But they're like, he was an informant, and he's like, okay, that's fine. And they're like, and then they allude that he might get some money, but then they kind of allude that he might not.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very weird. But anyway, then he drives off, and him and Owen Wilson are driving off together, and I'm like, no one cares about Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
And then they drop Owen Wilson off, and then he goes and picks up Catherine Waterston, and then they're like, oh, we're finally together. They make a thing this is finally true love. What the hell is that ending? Because none of these characters really seem to care about each other in the way that ending would be satisfying.
It seems more like the movie is telling you it's the star-crossed thing, even though it never comes across. It's just very I don't know, and that's why I almost feel if this was you kind of said, if it was following any other character in the movie, or even doing a Magnolia style, we follow everyone for a little bit. Because you follow just him the whole time.
Yeah.
He is in every scene.
It's a PI movie. It's got to be all about the PI. You've got to only want to. You have to want to see through his eyes, which we clearly do not want to see through his eyes the whole time.
But But there's cool stuff. How like it would almost like it'd be cool to see Martin Short get
Yeah,
killed.
totally.
It would,
And then there's
just yeah.
we haven't even talked about. There's like a narrator
Dude,
who's another
I think
girl
that's
that
like the
Doug's
main
kind
problem
of
of the
dating.
movie
That
is the narrator, because like that's like what makes you not sure if it's an art film or if it's a comedy film or a noir film, because she's
yeah,
so drifty, and it's cool, but it's like she's drifted, like we've got the astrology in the air and all these things, and then you cut to Doc and Shasta, that's Joaquin Phoenix and Catherine Waterston talking for the first time, but they're like in this whole art film drifty era, but they're saying like noir lines, and they sound so weird the way they're talking. And it's
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
are you using slang like in a hip snatch way, but you speak in a weird art house way? Like it doesn't make it's so unclear.
And then and the narrator does not factor into
No.
the story at all. So it feels like, and like what I think also what I had a problem with is that the narrator also isn't talking about anything really related to the story. She's like giving back story
She'll
to
give
people,
background on some
Yeah.
of the
and
characters,
but it's
which,
like
yeah,
it's never background that we couldn't have spaced out on
Right.
herself. Like you, very clearly, you understand that Bigfoot is like been fucked up because his partner got killed. You didn't need her to tell you that wistfully.
Yeah.
But then also, it feels like she doesn't know. Like if you're gonna have a narrator, they should either know what's going to happen, like it should be telling you in reverse, or they should be giving you stuff like that you need to, like in Hateful Eight, where they're like, "Oh, in the last 2 hours, here's what
Yeah.
happened." You know, it's a little bit lazy in Hateful Eight, but they do it. And in this one, it's just kind of like you can cut out all of
Right.
her narration, and you
Yeah.
don't lose anything from the film.
yeah. It's like Blade Runner or your favorite film of 2024, Megalopolis.
Yeah,
Redundant
Yeah.
narration.
It just
yeah.
Bringing and confusing because it's not like it's like again it's just a woman he knows who's not part of the plot, but I
Right.
guess who
Right.
kind of knows it.
And
It's
it's
like I see it's like supposed to be
and it's-
stylish, but
Yeah.
it just doesn't. Yeah.
Again, it's so hard to care about the love story. Like he's so defined by all the women in his life that it's hard for them to be like, oh, but this one is the most perfect, when they all have about the same amount of
Yeah.
screen time. And one of them is narrating, which automatically puts more emphasis
Yeah.
on her as a character, because I mean she obviously like knows a lot about Doc, but then they're kind of implying that Catherine Waterston is the one who really knows the real Doc and who like sees through his shit. But then why is this other girl the narrator? And then why is Reese Witherspoon the one he goes to every time he's in
Right.
trouble? Like none of that matches, you know?
It doesn't really connect. It feels very I don't know, just like he maybe. And I've never read a Thomas Pynchon novel. I know it's like a very specific style of like writing that people like love or hate, and I wonder if it was almost like PTA was being like, oh, this will be like a challenge.
I will
to, like,
say
adapt
I've read this book,
and
it is exactly like the trailer.
Yeah.
It's like it's Pynchon
Really?
light is why I read it. I read it at this job that I had to work a late shift on the phones, and so I had just tons of downtime. And I was able to read it at work, and it was like really fun, and it's super goofy. It's just so Coen Brothers all up and down the street, like, and it's like all the like Doc is like so funny, and like all the characters are so funny, and it's so zippy and zany like the whole time. So I loved the book. I thought it was so great, and so like watching the movie, I didn't want to bring up the book thing because I think that's kind of like the book does this, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But
I think that's interesting.
it's
the
hugely
contrast.
contrasted. It's like the book, which is written by the most like art house author of all time. It's like the movie, or the actual book is like so fun and like easy and crime thriller and like entertaining, and like this movie just like takes the weed too far. Like they just got too high when they made it, and so it's just like almost like this is it makes it kind of boring when it should have been like this cool crime thriller. And I think that PTA is just kind of like not that funny.
Yeah,
like I think he's like not a comedy, which is fine. I don't mean that in a bad way.
See,
he can be funny, but not in the way that this movie.
I don't agree because
hold on. I don't think that he's funny in the way that this book, like that this story should be told. I don't think that he's like
the
that
type of humor.
He's funny in like character interactions, like Boogie Night stuff.
Yeah.
Like whenever John C. Reilly and Mark Wahlberg are like comparing their lift weights, like when they first become friends, hilarious scene. That's so good.
Yeah.
But it's like. Yeah. This story is, I don't think that it really plays to PTA's strengths when it comes to like what he can do to be funny.
Well, see, and now that you've said that and you've made me think about it, I almost feel like PTA like challenged himself to make kind of like what you were saying earlier. Like you challenged himself to make this as prestigious as like There Will Be Blood, but it's kind of that thing where like talking about zany, it's like yes, this movie doesn't have those zany interactions, but it should. Like every character that he interacts with should be zany back and forth, but it's almost like Paul Thomas Anderson is just focused on the moments between those moments. So we see the before, we see the after, but we don't see. And it was like he kind of, and I don't want to say like he was too full of himself, but whatever it was, like he was trying to go for this kind of like, I'm like I'm kind of getting in between, and it like does not work at all. Like because
it feels almost like an experiment in like genre that just it doesn't land, I guess.
And especially for such a plot heavy movie, it's kind of like you can't be in between the raindrops when it's like you
in between the raindrops. Hell yeah!
Like, but that's like the perfect all of his hangout type movies. It's like, oh, the plot's not that important because it's more of just you get the gist of like, oh, the porno studio, or oh, this like teen hanging out with this 25-year-old who's like a loser. Broad strokes, whereas this is like, no, there's like 30 characters and they'll only come up in dialogue like once, so if you're not paying attention you do not know what's gonna happen.
I feel like the character, I think her name is not Luz, but the lady who first is at Chick Planet, the head shop, the one that like she gets to ride with them, like she's like the main stripper girl or like main prostitute. She's in the correct movie. She's the one who has like the humor down. And then I feel like Martin Short's character has the humor down, and Josh Brolin has the humor down. They're all three they know what movie they're in, and I feel like no one else really knew what they were in. They were in a different movie.
Yeah, and you can kind of see too. Like sometimes, I mean, maybe it's just my perception, but like even some of the actors don't seem to like be able to jump on the way they're talking, as like Eric Roberts seems a little bit, not Eric Roberts, but his wife, the girl who plays his wife, seems a little bit off. Like she doesn't seem like she knows how to like deal with what's happening.
To be fair, Eric Roberts does like 2,500 movies a year.
Oh,
so
I also read one more thing.
He's got
something I saw today. It was just on Wikipedia, so I didn't go like too deep into this, but they were talking about how when they were filming the movie, like PTA like didn't really have like a direction he was like trying to go for yet. And he was going to kind of like figure it all out like as they went along and like kind of in the editing room. And I think that he probably did that for like the master and stuff, and it kind of works because it's like not really a story like this. But I feel like just like with Mystery Men, it's like a movie that has this much style needed to make it entertaining. You really need to have a direction. Like you really need to figure out what this really complicated tone is going to be. And it's like humor is so hard, and this movie like really relies on it, like this humor landing. And it's like having this.
Yeah, or even like, because they're like kind of in our Mystery Men review, it's like, oh, it's different styles of humor that really don't land.
You really need to be solidified. You really need to have like that vision, right?
The vibe down.
Because this movie ended up on some like top 10 lists and stuff, but I don't know anyone that really talks about it anymore. I don't think this is one of his more loved movies.
And I think that's the thing. I think people. It's like you were excited for a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and maybe you're gonna like it either way. But I just remember being like, just disappointed. I don't know, and if you did like it, sound off in the comments. Tell us why.
It's not dog shit. It just doesn't work in the way that you want it to.
No, I mean it's still well made and stuff, and
it's also like humor's the most objective.
I know it really is true.
Because if there's movies that don't, there's like horror films that don't scare me, but I still like them because I just like the idea. But if a comedy does not make you laugh, it doesn't matter how well it's made. You're not gonna like that comedy, which is one of the reasons we don't really do comedies on here, because it's so subjective.
And I mean, and the cinematography is beautiful.
Well, I didn't even know this was a comedy either. I was just like, I assume it's like one of his.
Neither did Paul Thomas Anderson.
There's like so much good stuff in here though. There's some scenes that are great, and like no one's like a bad performer. They're just all in different movies, and like they really catch that like golden hour California vibe, and it feels so relaxed and cool. And like I want this to be one of my most favorite movies ever, and I think that's why I have so much bad stuff to say about it.
I know,
because I want it to be my number one, and it's just not, and that breaks my heart a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah, like I said, I've never been let down by a PTA movie until now. I even like the ones that Andrew hates.
All right, then. Well, we will talk to you guys. I don't know why. Like Josh keeps trying to goad me, but it's not going to work. We'll see you guys next time on the Bomb Squad.
It's There Will Be Bloody. It's Oil Men.
And
yeah, that's the worst one.